Hello and welcome to the Book Bunch. Today we are going to be doing a review of Brandon Sanderson's The Reakoners series. This is his take on a superhero Earth and what that would look like, and a really good representation of the battle against good and evil, and if we as humans were given an extreme amount of power, would we abuse it, and all of that kind of thing. So yes, this is the series. There are 4 books. One of them is just a short story. It is technically like the second book, but I guess you'd call it 1.5 in the series. You don't have to read it for the rest of the story to make sense, but it just kind of sets up the second book a little bit better. So yeah, we're going to talk about it. Let me know in the comments below if you have read this one, if you like this one, and please consider subscribing. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up so that you can see more of my content and so that you know when I upload more videos. So let's get into it. So guys, Steelheart. This was very different to anything I've ever read. I don't really read too much superhero fiction or anything like that. I somewhat keep up with the DC and Marvel film universes. I used to, when I was a kid, read comics, but I haven't in a long time. And I've never read a superhero novel. So yeah, very outside of my comfort zone, but I actually really enjoyed it more than I thought I would. So in future I might pick up more superhero related fiction, just because it was interesting to read. Reading about how they fight is also really interesting because obviously a lot of it isn't ground in reality, and they make a comment in this a lot that it defies physics and all sorts of different things like that. So yeah, it's interesting to read about. It's cool to see how writers are able to write those kind of action scenes and fight scenes and things, and how they can develop different powers and all of that kind of thing. So I really enjoyed it. I have read a lot of Brandon Sanderson, as you guys know, and I think he is a really, really good writer. I don't think there's any book that I've read that I didn't like. There's definitely some that I like more than others, but there's none that I've been like, this was a bad book or unenjoyable or whatever. But yeah, not my favorite of his, just because he's written some really phenomenal things, but this is definitely up there in some of my best reads of all time. I'd probably give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars for the whole series. So yeah, definitely would recommend it to you guys. But what is it about? So we actually follow a boy in the like prologue of the series, and then he is like 18, 19 in the rest of the series. So he is a normal human, hasn't got any powers, and he witnesses one of these like superheroes who aren't heroes. So I guess they're all supervillains, you should say, to be a bit more accurate. But he witnesses one of them killing a bunch of innocent people, including his own father. So this boy, as he grows older, develops this vendetta and is determined to take down this supervillain. The supervillain's name is Steelheart. All of the books are named after these supervillain characters. And yeah, so this first book focuses on his vendetta and trying to take Steelheart down, and then the other books follow on from that as what the aftermath of that plan was, and how the I can't really say too much without spoiling it, but there's some things that happen that are definitely twists and turns, and they are hinted at, so if you are really on top of it, you might be able to figure out what it is along the way. But yeah, there's quite a few twists and turns that happen, and that affects the other book. So I'm not really going to go into detail in this first overview about what happens, but I'll do a little spoilery bit at the end so we can talk about the other books, because if I talk about those now, it kind of will spoil this one. So yeah, we focus on this guy who is trying to take down Steelheart, and he spent the last 10 years of his life since the incident happened with his dad learning all about these beings. They're called epics, and all their powers, their weaknesses, all of that thing, so that they can take him down and the other ones down as well. And he has this hatred and revenge that is pushing him forward. He's also a bit of a nerd, though he hates being called that. And so he gets a bit obsessive over them and has all this knowledge that most people don't have or is really hard to find. He's the only person who is alive that knows Steelheart's weakness apart from Steelheart himself, because of that incident on the day that his dad passed away. And yeah, it's really interesting because Steelheart has spent a lot of time and effort making sure no one else would know his weakness and wiped out everybody. And yeah, it's really interesting. The main plot behind the story is this boy obviously can't do it on his own. So when he becomes older and he's in his late teens, he decides to try to join this group called the Reakoners, who are these people who are trying to fight back against the epics, and they are trying to kill as many epics as they can to somewhat bring normalcy back to life and everything, so that humans aren't being needlessly killed constantly, because that's kind of what these epics do. They have this big ego and they don't have any empathy at all, and so they just kill people all the time for no reason, or because those humans have mindlessly inconvenienced them. Like if they ask for a glass of water and it's not there fast enough, they'll kill that person. Or if that person interrupts their day or gets in their way or breathes in front of them too loudly or anything like that, these epics a lot of the time kill these people. So yeah, it's basically this group of people who are trying to fight back and get some justice. So they also study the epics, try and find their weaknesses, and then try to take them down. And yeah, this first book is about him trying to join the Reckoners and convince them of this plan to take down Steelheart so that he can do it and actually make it achievable, because he can't take on this epic on his own. So yeah, super interesting premise. Love the story and everything. I know it's probably not everyone's cup of tea, and for people who are really hardcore Sanderson fans, they probably agree that it's not his absolute best. I have even heard people don't like it at all, but I still think you should give it a go because I really liked it. Again, not my absolute favorite of his writing, but definitely still worth your time and your money to read them. And I love the covers, they're super cool. They're like a shiny teal with the black and grey, which I think looks really, really nice. And then they all have the white spine, which looks really cool too. So yeah, that's the overview. Now I'm going to talk a bit more about the other books, which will contain spoilers, so just be aware of that. But yes, I will get into explaining the rest of the series. So, spoiler time. At the end of Steelheart, when you find out that Megan is actually Firefight, that was a bit crazy. I had a feeling throughout the whole thing, I was like, surely one of them is going to be an epic. And then you find out that the leader is an epic, which kind of makes sense, but then like you don't expect more than one of them to be an epic, which is a bit wild. It does make sense though, like I was trying to say in my non-spoiler a bit, like if you're paying attention, it does make sense because her personality changes so abruptly, and she does clearly get that telltale I'm snappy, I'm agitated, I don't like people, I'm gonna hurt you kind of vibe, which is really interesting. And the fact that she does want to not save Steelheart, but like protect him, because she knows what it's like to be an epic and all of the rest of it. And like he is one of the better of them, as crazy as that sounds. yeah, I find that so interesting. And then with mitosis was all right. I definitely don't know if it's like necessary to read it because it was only like 50 pages or something um, for it, but it does sort of help with the transition of how the city is then run afterwards when Stillheart's dead, and also the fact that they are piecing together that the weaknesses have a connection and all of that kind of thing with his music. So that one was interesting, but there's really not too much to say. They just fight a lesser of the epics, and it turns out that his music is his weakness. And then in Firefight, which is obviously named after Megan's character, that was wild, and the Ocean City and all of that. I really liked the, oh, what's his name? Dream. I can't remember. The epic that is in the coma that makes the city glow and the food, and he talks with the fortune cookies. That was really cool. I loved that character and that concept, so I really liked that. I also like that they have a bigger purpose now, that they're like, okay, Calamity is actually an epic and we might have to do about something about him and all of that. I also like that, like the direction the story went, where it was about, okay, well, can we save these epics? Do they all have to be bad? Are they being corrupted? All of that kind of thing. I love that whole situation. I thought that was really cool. But oh, yeah, what happens to Professor at the end? Like you can see it coming, like a freight train, but it's like one of those freight trains where you're just so stunned and you know it's going to happen. You know it's inevitable that you can't jump off the track, so it hits you in full force. It's kind of like that, or I felt like that. Like I knew it was going to happen, but I was hoping it wouldn't at the same time. And I was a bit bummed, like that some of the team was killed and all of that. That was a bit crazy, and just, yeah, I thought it was cool that he also, David was like given the chance to be an epic and he like turned it down. But then you find out in Calamity that he is still an epic. He's just like overcome it, so he's doesn't have his powers or is holding back his powers, kind of thing. Yeah, I thought that was a really cool twist, and I love how this superhero system works and how they can use this technology and all of that. I think that is so cool, and I really appreciate that at the start of Calamity they explain that. They explain how it's all created and everything, because they go to the lab where it's all made and you find out a bit more about it, because it just makes it feel more real and grounded and like a real possibility, because yeah, it is grounded, I guess. I also like the twist at the end that Calamity comes from like a different race or dimension, or I don't really know, but like a higher place, it almost seems like is the intention. I like that. It makes the universe feel bigger than just the world. I thought that was a cool thing to add. I also loved the twist at the end of who Calamity is. That was unexpected. I kind of was thinking the whole time when they were like trying to play out the plan, where like the professor was going to like kill him to get the powers so that he'd be like the ultimate epic and all of the rest of it. But it does make you go like, well, why isn't that epic that's got all of these powers trying to do that anyway? So I thought that was interesting. And yeah, it was still a shock to find out that he was Calamity in the end and all of that kind of thing. I do like that reveal of he can only take your powers back if you kind of let him and you give it up and you are still afraid and you haven't like made peace with it in yourself. I thought that was really interesting. And I love, like, it made my heart so happy that David's dad was alive in the other dimension, and they, like, the dad in the other dimension had lost David, and they were able to like have this relationship across dimensions and everything because of Megan. I thought that was so beautiful, and it did make me tear up a little bit because a lot of Brandon Sanderson books are just depressing. Like, they always have pretty good endings, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the ending won't be tragic. Like, it'll be a satisfying ending, but it won't necessarily be a good ending, if that makes sense. Whereas, like, this, I feel like was a good ending because David ended up being alive, Megan ended up being alive, and then David's dad was alive. And even like Cody and Abraham, even though they were severely wounded and everything, and even Professor, like, they were still alive. It was sad that Tia died, but I'm kind of glad she died because it needed to happen, I feel like, for Professor's character to like get where he needed to be and all of that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm glad that it wasn't a miserable ending like some of his books where every single person dies or next to almost everybody dies and like one person or two people are left. I was glad that it did end somewhat positively. So yeah, that is the Reakoners series. That is the spoilers. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree with what I said. I would love to talk to you guys about it and see your thoughts if you have read this series, if you're gonna read this series, because yeah, I haven't heard heaps of people talk about it, and I do think it deserves to be talked about because not only is it Brandon Sanderson, but it is just a good superhero series that I haven't heard much about. It is completely clean. So, yeah, as a Christian, I do recommend it as well. It is Christian friendly if that is something that is important to you. It doesn't even really have any swearing because they all use like their world swearing, so it's not even like bad in that sense. That so yeah, I know that I can get a bit sensitive to when books have a lot of swearing, so this is good for me because it's made up swearing, so it doesn't bother me. But yeah, it was completely clean and completely all good. So that was the Reckoners. I hope you guys enjoyed my little review. Let me know what you would like me to review next. I do have quite a few books that I do want to get to reading, but if there is some that you really want to see as a review, let me know and I will make sure I get to those ones first for you, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great week. Bye.